You know what? I'll say it. At time of recording, we're only 7 episodes into Daredevil Born Again, with the 8th coming out the day I'm uploading this, but I can confidently make the claim that nothing in what we've seen has matched this episode of the original Netflix series. Maybe by some miracle, the last 2 episodes of Born Again are incredible, but I can't imagine them reaching this lofty peak. The only thing that even comes close being the 3rd season, which already deserves all of the praise for achieving the impossible and somehow being better than season 1. Seriously, I still don't think any one episode of season 3 tops this interaction or the fight that follows, but that whole season as one big package is still some of the best Daredevil we've ever gotten. I remember binging it the night it came out and being exponentially more enthralled as it went on. Going to college at that time, I even needed to wake up early for an 8 a.m. class the next day, but I didn't need sleep. I needed answers. In all seriousness, it wasn't answers. I just wanted to see more cool fight scenes and how it would wrap up. With me understanding that once that season was over, that would be the last time we saw that version of Matt Murdock. Of course, that turned out to not be the case, but we would still have to wait a long while. And for my money, it was a damn good ending. But while season 3 might come up again, I'm not here to talk about that. Today, I'm here to talk about one episode that comes early on in season 2. Welcome to Sandwich Reviews. I'm the Talking Sentient Sandwich, your nihilistic optimist, and as much as I undeniably enjoy Born Again, going back to watch this singular episode time and time again has proven to be more fun. And if you haven't guessed, or somehow clicked on this video without being observant enough to look at the thumbnail, I am of course talking about Season 2, Episode 3, titled New York's Finest, which if we could just stop and bask at how amazing that title is, almost spoofing the world's finest. Well, not almost, they definitely are. But my god, who thought of that? Is that even from the comics? I don't know, but I love it. But if you aren't as much of a diehard Daredevil fanboy and haven't had Netflix's show on loop, or just don't have each episode's plot seared into your brain, then let me catch you up to speed. In the previous episode, the Punisher and Daredevil have a spectacular fight, and Daredevil does not come out on top. He wakes up chained to a roof and spends a large portion of the episode planted right there, stuck debating the Punisher. And they do just that, discussing morality and the nature of good and evil, with the overarching argument of how best to deal with it. When Matt Murdock and Frank Castle argue, it is depicted as two people completely planted in the viewpoints they hold, refusing to budge an inch and sacrifice even a shred of their righteous perspective. And let me tell you, with both being so adamantly faithful to their beliefs, you'd think it was pointless for them to have such a lengthy debate. But that made for something that might have been better than if one of them were to be convinced otherwise. Matt might actually be trying to persuade Frank to not kill, but in no way, shape, or form does Frank ever believe that what he is doing is wrong. And more than him believing in his own righteousness, Frank completely understands that he's not going to change Daredevil's mind. He doesn't know it yet, but Frank realizes the type of person Matt is, pushing his holier-than-thou agenda onto others for the sake of his better world, an idea that is at the foundation of most superheroes. And because Frank's better world doesn't align with Matt's, and he believes that the pain he causes for, let's be real, his own enjoyment can save the good guys from the bad guys, permanently. And so, Frank takes all of Matt's pleadings as just that, an agenda being pushed onto him. And I'm not sure if Frank gets pissed at him and goes on the defensive because of that, or if he's just perpetually that pissed, which I would also buy. Yet the way that Frank claps back at every point Matt brings up is nothing short of masterful, pulling every therapy stunt in the book, most likely learned in his time as a lawyer. Matt cycles through those tactics faster than he cycles through whether or not he's a practicing Catholic, first attempting to talk about the military's sense of duty and what soldiers experience, before realizing that isn't even sort of getting to Frank, and quickly transitions to his family, but quickly learns nothing is going to pacify the Punisher. So instead, Matt takes a different approach and decides to call him out for his hypocrisy, and asks what Frank would do if someone like him, maybe even someone he creates, comes after him. And Frank replies, they better not miss. In a minute, I want to talk about how much the writers understood the Punisher, but that right there really demonstrated how good the writing was. Because Frank Castle has not and will not ever care about whether or not what he's doing is just or correct. So long as the right people are in the ground, that's all that matters. And that's the exact reason why the Punisher believes that Daredevil is nothing more than a half measure, which brings up the age-old Batman argument that by putting his psychopathic criminals away in a prison or an asylum and not 6 feet in the ground, he's guilty of manslaughter every time they get out and kill someone. Putting the idea of second chances to the side, because that's a topic that requires its own 30-minute video essay, but the logistical, utilitarian side of me does see the advantages of stopping the bad guys for good. Though I should clarify, especially for my video about Invincible and utilitarianism, that I am obviously talking about a fictional universe. The real world is just so much more complex, with a billion moving parts to each story, and also the simple fact that it's not a story. Most of the time, it's unsatisfying and lacking in any sense of structure. Some deserve a second chance, yet that's a subjective case-by-case decision that, if you're not the Punisher, must be determined for each individual crime, be it small or major. But again, that's a conversation for another day, because Frank Castle sure doesn't believe in second chances. You mess up, that's it. A mission he's taken upon himself to prevent the tragedy that happened to his family from ever happening again, but also one that he undergoes just because he's angry. And it's easy to look at someone like the Punisher and see how deranged they are, but writing them like that while also shaping him to make sense in every viewer's mind is truly difficult. Because it's the similarities between Daredevil and the Punisher that create such compelling moments in this episode, making the dialogue so thematically rich. The idea that given any kind of situation where someone is being hurt, neither could walk away is so interesting to me, and is further expanded upon when Frank rightfully gives Matt the Uno reverse card, asking if he could walk away, because of course he couldn't. He's a hero. Objectively, Frank isn't a hero. He's also not trying to be, but he is in the business of saving lives, begrudgingly most of the time, but he does it nonetheless. Is that the only similarity between the two? Not at all, but it is the easiest to point out and one the episode highlights whenever it gets the chance. Yet something else that comes up once or twice within the idea of just how similar they are is the usage of the term one bad day. And I'm not sure who really first coined the term, but recently that title has been given to multiple Batman villain origin comics, the most well known being single story runs by various writers and artists, telling the usually non-canonical tale of how one bad day turned a normal person into the monstrous and colorful freak we all know and love from Batman's Rogues Gallery. And here in Daredevil, it's used just as well, forcing a lens onto Matt's character and seeing just how far he's actually gone. Not all the way there, but much closer to that line than even he realized. And that's a concept so many superhero stories try and fail at, attempting to show how emotionally taxing going out every night to fight crime would be, or how crazy a person has to be to do that, or even unironically step outside in a garish costume. And that can work, but it has to be handled so delicately, and empirically hasn't, that I'm often bored with that plotline. Yet here in New York's finest, the idea that Daredevil has already lost his marbles and is only one bad day from becoming the Punisher is a comparison that I will never forget. Do I wish that the rest of the season hit that theme home a bit better? Yeah, but we're not here to discuss the lackluster second half of season 2, though it did have some great stuff with the trial of the Punisher. We're here to talk about episode 3, because as promised, I want to mention how much these writers understood the Punisher, and they clearly knew the assignment and proved themselves from minute 1, but they made sure to do Frank Castle justice, nailing his character with a performance that's only ever been matched by Ray Stevenson in Warzone, which is ironic because my only problem with season 2 of Daredevil is that there isn't enough of John Bernthal, and that's probably because they blew their wad early. But am I mad? Nah, we got New York's finest. And to complete the great dialogue between Daredevil and the Punisher, Frank duct tapes a gun to Matt's hand and brings out a murderer named Grotto we'd been getting to know in the 2 previous episodes. Giving Matt the option of saving Grotto, Frank leaves himself open, but promises to kill Grotto at the end of a count to 3. As per usual, given an ultimatum involving someone's life, the superhero manages to find a way out that isn't as black and white as their captors make it out to be, but Frank still shoots and kills Grotto and sets in motion a biker gang infiltrating the building, ending the ethical squabble and beginning the action. And as much as I loved that debate, especially now that I'm older and can appreciate the undertones, on my first watch, the stitched together one take going all the way down the stairs is what permanently cemented this episode in my teenage mind. It starts out with a classic hallway shot, but quickly reveals the increased budget from season 1. Passing the camera along from person to person is as smooth as ever. Sure, some of the hidden cuts aren't as convincing or well set up as others, and it clearly isn't as phenomenal as the extra long oneer in season 3, and not as emotionally important as the first seasons, with both of those being done with plenty of narrative purpose. Yet despite it not being as intellectual as the others, this fight in season 2 is still really fun to see. And this is less thematically important, but this fight also features Daredevil with a chain, and for quite a while, I thought that was the coolest thing in the world, making me think Daredevil should always have a chain, though that is kinda Ghost Rider's thing, but that's a flaming chain, so this is technically different. Besides, I would still love to see an iteration of Ghost Rider get a third chance, and his appearances in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. were really good, but at this point, we're gonna see a possessed Daredevil actually whipping around a flaming chain, almost like in the Shadowland comic, before we ever get to see Ghost Rider again. But getting back to New York's Finest to dissect one last aspect I've touched on but not fully dived into, is how the characters of Matt and Frank are so diametrically opposed to each other, whether it be their system of faith, their belief in the goodness of humanity, or their methods of fixing a problem. They really are two different sides of the same coin, which is the exact reason why after their initial meetup and conflict, I can't ever buy them buddying up or even begrudgingly meeting to non-violently hash out an issue. Maybe that's just because I've always characterized Matt as being one of those heroes so possessive of Hell's Kitchen that he wouldn't stand for anyone gunning others down, and Frank as someone who wouldn't stand for anyone even sort of getting in his way. But with all that being said, I also can't deny how much I love seeing them together. Yet that requires a lot of delicate and impeccable writing, like what we see in season 2, episode 3 of Daredevil. And I thought it was also a great touch to end on the chilling note of the Punisher skull logo revealing that Frank's got a bullet in his skull from when his family was killed. Also, Foggy's doing his own thing the whole episode too, but honestly, who cares? We love you, Foggy, and I'm crossing my fingers, spoiler alert, that he's not actually dead, though that crackpot theory I spent way too long rationalizing in my review of Born Against premiere is starting to seem like just that, a crackpot theory. But with all of that being said, if you've got the time, go back and check out New York's Finest. And if you've got even more time, go watch all 3 of Daredevil's perfect seasons. As I've mentioned, season 2 could have been better, but it's still infinitely better than most superhero stuff. It's just, compared to seasons 1 and 3, it's not quite that exceptional, but there's still some next level cinematography and thematic discussions throughout the whole show. Whether it be an establishing shot, a great dialogue shot reverse shot, or an awesome action scene with incredible choreography, everything is added with untold layers of intention that deepens any rewatch. But what are your thoughts on Netflix's Daredevil? Do you agree that New York's Finest is its best episode? Or does another come to mind? Perhaps season 3 episode 6, because that sure came to mind for me. But drop a comment with your thoughts. And of course, I barely mentioned Born Again, but that was intentional, because next week, a little bit after the last episode drops, because it does take me a while to write the script and edit the video, but after that, I'll have a full Born Again review out. So look forward to that, as well as a Last of Us video essay. And as always, thanks for watching. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe for weekly video essays and reviews, and enjoy a delicious sandwich.